Hi there, this is Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez, and this is the Design Your Physician Life podcast. Today, I'm going to talk about AI built by doctors for doctors. We have the wonderful Dr. Omar Mohtar from ParaDocs Health. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Design Your Physician Life podcast, where you will get excited about being a physician, learn the tools that can help boost your success, and great tips from successful doctors. Join us to unlock the keys to an amazing physician life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode. Today, we're very excited to have Dr. Omar Mohtar here. Welcome to our episode today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So you're here because you are the driving force behind ParaDocs Health. We know that you graduated Boston University for the School of Medicine as a distinguished physician scientist, both not only medical doctor, but also scientist. And your dissertation was actually on leptin's long-term effects of weight gain. And that dissertation gained you an editorial award from Cell Signaling. But regardless of that huge, achievement there, what really caught your attention was the inefficiencies that you saw in the clinical settings in terms of the documentation and how that affects the care that the physicians give the patients. And that's what took you then to that Texas Medical Center Innovation Biodesign Program. And that's where you then immerse yourself, and you developed a summer research internship introducing some students to the critical role of AI in medicine. And now you have ParaDocs Health. So welcome. Thank you for being here. It's a great story. And let's start just diving into, quickly into who was the one who wanted to be a doctor. Was like little Omar or later Omar? Who was that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I like many, others, I grew up second generation in America. My parents are both Lebanese. And in our culture, it's like doctor or engineer for the most part. And so there was a big emphasis of teaching me medical concepts. And I was very interested in the body and how it heals, more of its own natural healing powers, and how we could study that in a way to maybe improve like one's health as we get older or as we get sick. So I was very much interested in that. And so science and all these other concepts really came very well to me at a young age. I found them really exciting. And when I was in college was when I made the decision to apply as an MD PhD, because I told one of my mentors, who was my mom's uncle. He advised me, I came to him with a concern. I say, I really like medicine, but I don't know if I'm going to enjoy being a doctor. I was concerned because I said I want to do like research. I want to bring an impact to people that can affect a large scale. And I feel like doctors are we all do honorable work, but like something like a new drug transforms medicine. And I want to think on a scale like that. And so he told me, just do an MD PhD and you'll figure it out later. So I took that as like, okay, let's just do it. I didn't know what I was signing up for, to tell you the truth. And 10 years of the MD PhD program at BU was some of the most transformative time for me. Very, very difficult though. We all know med school is very challenging. Imagine that. And then they slap in the middle of your med school, they slap in like 4+ years of PhD. And my PhD was pretty rough.
To me, it's funny. Is it just do an MD PhD? It's like, really? It's not that just I had all these years. Like when we went to medical school, they say you're going to get into this submarine. You got into the submarine of the submarines in the MBA PhD program.
Yeah, no, actually, an analogy we used to use is like, if being in med school is like being under a submarine for 4 years, an MD PhD is like 2 years under, and somehow you immediately go up in the sky and now you're flying a plane and you have to go back in the submarine magically. And we don't know how that happens, but it does. So it's a very drastic shift in mindset, in intensity. Med school is more like you have to be as broad as possible with knowledge. So like a broad, wide, inch deep. PhD is inch wide, but you're drilling as deep as possible, discovering something unknown that hasn't been discovered in science. And so shifting gears in that mindset really, made me think about different ways of seeing the same information. Like, how would a doctor see this information versus a scientist? Or now in the more modern way, like a data analyst, for example. There's so many insights that you can draw by having the right people in the room, having a diverse conversation, which is really where like some of the greatest eureka moments come out of science these days. So I really enjoyed the PhD, but some of my ideas that I proposed were just seen as a little like too overambitious, which kind of hurt a bit to hear. Like, your idea is like it's too far out there. And I'm like, but isn't that what new ideas are supposed to be? Something like, I don't understand how we can make that happen. And then you do one day. So I took that as like, okay, maybe academia is not really for me. I need something that allows me to take a bit more risk, but still be in the healthcare space. So I do my last years of med school, right? Which is like when you focus on like your rotations. I was inclining on going to neurology. So I was really passionate about like, first it was psychiatry for a bit, and then neurology took more weight. But I had this one day at work. I went in, it was during my sub internship in neurology. And I remember I gave a presentation about like all the possible ways to diagnose like certain type of brain conditions. And the diagnosis was so vast and like really detailed. However, the treatment at the end of that was all the same, and there wasn't a very big outcome of patient health. So that really discouraged me, because I was saying it's like we have to put all this effort, but at the end of the day, sometimes our efforts are like only whatever the current medical practice has. So the innovation in these areas are still like they're still ripe for finding discovery. And that day. I remember I took the next day off, like I took a personal day, which you only have like two a year, right? So that's like a big deal. And what happened coincidentally that same day was when
Omar, we didn't have personal days in my time.
I know things have changed. But I would say this. I made the decision to take the personal day. That same day was the Beirut bombing that happened. So my inclination at first, like I need to take some time off. Then this happened, and it's like, okay, I definitely can't. Like, I mean, I need to now call family. I don't know who in my family is still safe, so I had to take that personal time to really like reflect on my own self and then and the lives of like my loved ones. So that was a very difficult time, and that was like in the middle of my last year of med school, right when I'm about to apply to residency. I made that decision right there. I said, I'm not going to push myself into something that seems like I'm not fitting in through right. I'm going to go find my own way. And I'd rather do that than be forced to do something that it seems like I'm getting a bit of resistance. So I made that decision, and it was not approved by a lot of people. There were a few people in the board who were very supportive, but everyone else thought I was making a huge mistake and wasting like 10 years of education, right? So that was a difficult time, but I eventually made my way to Houston. I got into the BioDesign Founder Program, which basically is a fellowship that teaches you the basics of how to launch a company. And that's where I am now today with what I'm doing in ParaDocs Health.
That's awesome. I'm curious about those ideas that you thought at some point and people thought that were like too far out. Can you share any of those ideas with us?
Oh, sure. So one of them was, for example, my first PhD was in nanomedicine. So I actually had to join another lab afterwards. That first lab unfortunately lost funding, and so when you lose funding in a lab, you have to jump ship and find a new place to support you. And in my case, since that was the only nanomedicine lab at BU, I had to start over completely. So, but when I was in that PhD lab, we proposed a nano formulation drug of hydroxyurea. Hydroxyurea, of course, for you all who know, is for sickle cell disease, and it's the only treatment that we have really that kind of has an effect. We found by encapsulating it in a certain way, we were able to deliver less of the drug, but more targeted, so that the side effects of hydroxyurea were not experienced by the patient. And so, we thought we had everything going well. We were talking about the concept of like, can we get this? Like, can we get a grant behind this? Can we get a patent behind this? And so in the process of doing this nano formulation, it was novel. However, the proposal we wrote to get the funding from the NSF and the NIH, they found our reach was too extreme. It's like, how can you promise that this can deliver less side effect? Like when you when you've only done this like on like a few mice and not on humans, if you want to get a patent for it. So because we haven't really gotten there due to lack of money, they decided to say no. And so that was a very weird thing to experience. I'm like, I thought the idea has weight on its own, and the preliminary results shows promise with cells and some mice, animal work that we have to start with, right? Because whenever you want to propose a new drug, you have to start from basic cells and work your way up to eventually man. So that really hurt because it made us feel like they didn't want to try new things. And I think during my PhD, I applied to 5 grants. Each one was rejected for like a very similar reason. However, I knew that it was probably maybe I'm in the wrong place because now our first grant with our company was awarded. So it's like, okay, I know how to write a grant, but it seems like it depends on like the time and the people. There's a lot of elements that go into play of how do you really write something that can have that value.
And you mentioned something that's very important in terms of entrepreneurship, which is that you're going to get, in many ways, many rejections, and you're going to get what we call those failures. And you had it through your years before, but that helped you grow to what you're doing right now with ParaDocs Health. So, and actually, thinking back also to part of our conversation, I hope that your family was okay in Beirut. We didn't talk about that, and I hope that they did okay. I don't know if that was the case at that time.
No, yeah, they were thankfully all good, but it was a difficult time for all of Lebanon at the time.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Moving on to where you are right now in your fellowship in ParaDocs Health, tell us about the process of getting into such a fellowship. Like you say, like you are going to leave clinical medicine behind and then now go directly from medical school to entrepreneurship. How was that change in mindset? You told us a little bit about it and about, helping people in a larger scale. But there's also things that need to happen in terms of the way that you study things, right? You're learning things right now that are way different from what you learned, even, from those grant applications, trying to get money for your project. So tell us about that change and how that is right now for you.
No, yeah, really well put. I think what we had to experience, or what I experienced during this process, was there is so much that, as a doctor, you're so hyper focused and hyper specialized on medicine and the patient and how to make all of that, work just well. However, when you go outside of medicine as a clinician, you realize that there are so many other skills that other people who work like a typical 9-to-5 job, they have these skills that they gain by osmosis just by working in business. So it is very much like you're kind of like the odd duckling when you go into like entrepreneurship, because you've been trained to become a clinician, and that means you sacrifice a lot of the other skills that make you typically well-rounded in a way, because you have to go through that process of intense training. So for me, it was more like I knew I need a structure. And so finding a program that would not only it gave me financial security because it gave me a salary for 1 year, and it gave me the platform to focus on literally learning how to do learning all the skills necessary, the business acumen, knowing the financial statements, knowing how to look and really operate a business. To the degree where more like an applied MBA, as opposed to the concept and the theory behind it. Really, in practice, go start a business and make it a healthcare one and design it to scale in a manner that can impact a global population if possible. So that's intimidating. It requires a lot of us. Basically, when I came to Houston, I had maybe a few books that I brought with me, and now I have 2 bookshelves full of books, because every now and then there's I need to learn about negotiation. I need to learn about sales, marketing. The last few books have been about AI and machine learning. So it's it just keeps, there's always more to read, and I like it. I really do. I think it's there's something about always want to continue learning and understand it, because our healthcare system is really complicated. And I'm not going to lie, it requires, I don't know how many textbooks I have to read to get a fragment of an idea of what's going on there.
No, it's funny because some questions that we get is what do you think the best book for entrepreneurship is? You know what, let's stop it there. There's not only one book. It's that's the same equivalent of you asking me, what's the best book for you to be a doctor?
Right.
You have to read about anatomy, physiology, microbiology, and all these things. So the same thing with entrepreneurship. And it's a lot to take. It's, they say drinking for a fire hose, like, no, it's way more than that. One of the things that I'm hearing from you is like you started with your projects being really about, like nanotechnology, right? In medicine there. And then being a neurologist and, thinking about neurology and psychiatry and going through these rotations and seeing these other things. And now we're talking about your current project, which is in artificial intelligence, machine learning. How was your transition getting there from a place where you were talking about patents for medications now to getting into artificial intelligence and machine learning?
It was definitely the long way around, to put it lightly. I was really into computers when I was a kid. It was one of my hobbies. I was one of those kids that I would build my own computer, and if you asked me, I'd probably build your computer too. So I was really into it and how everything worked all together. I always thought like very mechanistically, like there's parts and the parts come together, and the sum of those parts creates some greater function than each one individually. And that's why I liked biochemistry, because that's how protein and DNA and RNA work too. They all assemble and they create a function and they then disassemble. So seeing things as like little components was always like a great way for me to conceptualize certain topics. And artificial intelligence and machine learning, the recent advancements in there have really taken what I would call a simple concept of like, tables, like Excel, for example, just a, two-dimensional table. Basically, a lot of our artificial intelligence is based off of creating insights from tables. Now, one or multiple, but really, like that's really all it comes down to. But there are all these components that are interlinked with each other with data, and that's like where all things come together. So, I was really intimidated by data science, by machine learning, and I think I just bit the bullet one day, and I said, if I don't learn it, the company will fail. So that's the best motivation. And I think the sooner you can come to that realization, like I need to know this because it's going to impact not only my career, the careers of everyone around me. So it's one of those big things. Just like when the internet came out, I think that with those who were really didn't want to do anything with the internet, and look where we are now, like so much of the world revolves around it. So I found that like I was intimidated too with how ChatGPT, when it came out a year ago, how impressive it was, and it's gotten only more impressive. And so I realized this is our world now. It's good to understand what that is so that we know how to navigate it better. And it just, because my company revolves around machine learning, AI just became a natural thing to add on there. And now I start studying as much as I can to navigate out of all those tools, what's the best for our use case. And then, by proxy, what's best for doctors.
So talking about doctors and machine learning, and sometimes you have resistance to new technology. And in medicine, we do have some of that. We want everything to be proven before, and we are not necessarily the earliest adopters of a lot of things. And in entrepreneurship, you need to have early adoption of many things so that you can keep up, all right, maintaining these businesses. Any thoughts about, in general, how do you see physicians who really don't embrace this artificial intelligence, learning some of the basic concepts and basic tools right now, today? And we're recording this in November 2023, just 1 year after ChatGPT was, released, and with all the changes that we've had in just that 1 year.
Yeah, so I would say that one good idea with AI is I like to divide into 3 levels of how someone would be involved with AI. At the very bottom level is the most common use case, which is I use AI. What that means is like I use ChatGPT when I need to say I'm writing, like I took some meeting notes and I wrote bullet points, but I want to make it like a little bit more fleshed out so I can send it to my team. ChatGPT can come in to like really, instead of me spending like 20, 30 minutes to do that, because I'm not that great of a writer, I can basically say, here's some bullet points. Can you expand that into like a memo so I can send out to the team? That's really useful. And I think that's what most people are going to be using AI for. The next level, I think, is where most small businesses and startups are going to be, which is I want to train an AI model with my own existing data to better improve my operations. And operations can be anything from like, supply chain management to like drug distribution, or even like with like clinical operations. So AI, what it's going to notice things is like, let's say on our computer system, our EMR, we know how long it takes to go from the waiting room to actually being seen by the doctor. You record all those across time. You then get to understand, like the AI can say, do you know that on Tuesdays it's always 5 minutes long for patients to see you, the doctor? Why? Maybe we don't know, but now we know there's something to look into and why Tuesday is such an odd day. So like those are insights that AI can help for anyone who wants to understand the data without having to know the computer language coding knowledge to draw those insights. So the example I like to give people with that is imagine like if we use a hammer, you hit a nail, right? Imagine with AI, you hit the hammer, a whole door appears. So like it just accelerated the process of what you were trying to do with that nail, which is like I want to build a door. So one hit, boom, it's a door. Now you don't know if the door was in the right place or if it was the right type of door. That comes from your own insight of what you expect the data to show you. So you can still make mistakes with AI. So you have to, it's good to think in that framework. And I think that second level of AI is where everyone is trying to now navigate. And there's going to be some mistakes. It's going to be a rough ride, but that's how we're going to understand how should every business incorporate AI, much like how every business made an app back when the iPhone came out, and every business had a .com back when the internet came out. So it's like more like how are we going to do that? The last top tier, this is where OpenAI, Google, and all the big giants are going to be, and they're probably going to stay there. Those are the people who are creating new models of AI, which then trickle down for that second level to then use as a base model for their data. So they're the ones creating this advanced like artificial intelligence that's able to perform better and faster and like guess your dog's name and like what color shirt you should wear tomorrow, like all those crazy things they can do. But in healthcare, we're in that second level where it's like we're going to take this base model that can really predict well and then start feeding it, of course, de-identified and clean process data for it to start executing things like what is a good decision to make in this clinical case? What was the best drug out of a panel of like thousands of patients in the clinical trial? Was that imaging modality actually necessary compared to the standard of care? These are questions that would take years for data scientists to comb through, mostly to organize the data. It can be done in a matter of minutes. So that's where the AI advancement comes in that I think will impact everyone, especially in healthcare.
How do you feel your company ParaDocs Health is located right now? You think you're at the second level, between the second and third? Where are you?
Yeah, so we are in the second level. And the way I like to see it is the last 2 years have been like creating like the first floor of our building, if AI was a building. So it's like, a lot of people say, oh, you should just build floor by floor, but that's not correct. When you build a skyscraper, the first floor of that building is designed to withstand a skyscraper's weight. So you are going in building this massive structure. We're going in with AI thinking like, how do we organize the data? If data was like a pipe that had like a liquid flowing through it, I want to make sure every drop goes in the right place where it's supposed to be to make it more valuable, right? And so this is a concept that we've been building with, and our model of what we're doing is that we care a lot about patient security. So all the data, it's not patient data. It's actually the metadata. It's kind of like, like when you take a standardized exam for like step one or step two, and it's like you don't know who the patient is, but it's telling you the story about a patient, and you have to understand based on what I've read, what is the disease or what should I do as the next best action. That's how our model's training. It's taking data like that are happening in reality, but it's being formatted in a way that it's like the context remains, but no identifiers are there. So it's HIPAA compliant, and it allows the model to start thinking based off what I'm seeing. These would be the next steps. And in our case for ParaDocs, we focus on the next steps for coding and billing, as opposed to writing the notes or like finishing up with documenting the assessment and plan. So we help convert what was written to actionable items that we then send out on behalf of physicians, because we believe that we shouldn't burden doctors with another app or another thing to click on. They have enough as it is.
So tell us about how is the practicality of your idea of your product. Is that something that you plug into existing systems, or is like how does it work? What's the solution in detail?
So the way we work is that we partner with a health plan that usually participates in Medicare Advantage. That's the primary thing we focus on now. And with that, once we create a partnership, they give us all the clinics that participate in that plan, and then we would go and integrate with each clinic. And we do that in multiple. We have a few ways that we do that. Some ways are much easier now with technology, but once we plug in with that, what we then do is that we essentially scan the EMR data and translate the documentation into the validation of codes. Like if you put a certain IC10 code, we know why that code was used, and this was the evidence that backs it up. And so that is what
So,
we do. Mhm.
so I have a question about that because, for example, right now we have certain models of just the part of the note taking, okay, not the part of the billing and coding. Right now we have a lot of models that are being developed, but still the physician has to do a lot of clicking to comply with the Medicare requirements, which takes so long. You have to do all these for all the things that you're doing. So in your case, what I'm seeing is that I could use the much easier model if I'm in a clinic that takes insurance, and then just do a note, produce a note, like have the artificial intelligence listening to our conversation for the patient. Then I click or do cut and paste, produce a self note and put it there. And then there comes ParaDocs Health, and then would take all that extra clicking away from me so that I could not have to click all those buttons that are specific to comply with Medicare billing. Is that correct?
I would like to say, like, yeah, it's all about the experience that we want to transform. So you're absolutely right. I think the clicking is an annoyance that every doctor complains about, and
Yes.
rightfully so, because we weren't trained to be data entry specialists. We were trained as clinicians, and we want to talk to the patient. I believe personally, doctors actually like writing their note. I just don't think they like writing it up to the specifications for compliance and Medicare regulations, because it's a lot of clicking and extra work when the base note, which was like my conversation with the patient and the key insights that I need to make a differential diagnosis from my SOAP note, which I think is the value. Because I believe doctors, the way we take better notes is by writing while we're thinking, while we're talking with the patient. But this thing where we have to sit at the computer now and have to be so engaged that we don't look with the other patient eye to eye, I don't like that. I want it to be back in the day where we had paper in a way, but once that note is written, you maybe write the rest of your paper note in the EMR. Once your note is signed, that's when ParaDocs takes over. We work in the background. We take that note, its structure, and then we analyze what was written so that it can be used to close care gaps for your health plan. So if you have a bunch of like breast cancer screenings you need to do, we'll know it because it was written in the note, which every doctor will write that with their patient. So we capture that, and then we know it's for that health plan. It's in this format. Send it this way and send it on this day so it's on time.
So tell us about a little bit extra, for the one who's not a programmer, the doctor who's not a programmer, the doctor who doesn't know how this really works. Where does AI enter here in this, the way that you analyze? How are you analyzing the data? Which models are you using to analyze that data?
Okay, so yeah, that's a good question. I would say on the doctor end, I would first say, like, as clinicians, AI is going to come into the clinic in a few interesting ways. It's going to come into your back office first. So your admins are going to be using AI most likely first, and then your front desk will be using it. When it comes into the clinic, that may be because of like a health plan suggesting this, or if you're aligned with a certain hospital system, they will be using that because they want to capture certain metrics. So it's going to be coming into the periphery. I think the clinicians themselves and the decisions they want to make are going to be tools that are going to be most likely embedded in their EMR. So I believe EMRs are going to fight over having certain AI technology as a way to dominate the market, since that's going to be like, I don't expect doctors to go on Chrome and download a new AI model and put it into their practice. I don't think that's going to be happening. It's going to be involved with like the associated parts of a clinic that will be interfacing to make the doctor's life easy. I think that's still always the point. But there's a lot of AI technology out there that seem to be giving doctors more work to do, which goes against our own values of what we're trying to do at ParaDocs.
That's, there's a lot of places, as you say, where we can use this technology, and we're not going to be using all of it. We want to be doctors, right? For the most part. As an entrepreneur, from your point of view, when you were talking about marketing and selling and all these things, when you are talking to the health insurances, what's the transformation that you're selling them that this will do for them?
I think one of the things that health insurance companies get a bad rap for is how insistent they are on documentation for Medicare Advantage. And it makes sense because Medicare Advantage has 5 times more to documentation than fee for service. So if you've been trained your whole life to do commercial health plans, then you jump on a Medicare and someone told you about the revenue they can make on Medicare Advantage, you get curious, then you realize that your whole workflow has changed because you have to keep up with that, the regulation. We feel that with health insurance, the reason why the paperwork has increased was because there's a shift in how payment has changed with Medicare Advantage. It's not about what was done at the visit. It was more about, did you keep the patient healthy? Did you make sure they got their screenings? And that can only be confirmed through appropriate and accurate documentation. And that's why now you get bombarded with like way more paper forms than you ever had in your life. We feel that paper should not be introduced into the clinic in 2023. It should be a complete digital process. And honestly, without having the doctor should be prompted for review and approval of actions they've already signed off on. I assume, because when we sign a note, the assumption is I assume this note is like completely finished and ready for coding and submission for financial reimbursement. And so we feel like that should be like the final status of a note to then use and send to the insurance company. We don't need to have 10 pieces of paper that said, yeah, I wrote that in my note. So that's kind of where we come in, and they like that because they realize doctors for the most part just won't do it because it's like, I'd rather go home and spend time with my family, and like who's gonna be against that, right? So I feel like there's this big need that is satisfying both the clinic and the health insurance company, and I feel like the work we're trying to do might be able to mend that relationship as well.
So with your clients, I'm guessing you're selling directly to, well, you mentioned it, directly to the insurance companies. That's your client right there. What transformations are you seeing for them? Are you seeing like more things are like in a timely manner, or they're needing less personnel, or the personnel can do more things, or a combination of those, or they're like, saving money because of doing those other things with, quicker claims being processed? What specific transformations are you having from the insurance point of view?
I think first and foremost, the biggest transformation is the patient lives, especially minority lives, are finally being reported accurately with a system like this. There's gaps that fall between the cracks, and there's a lot of issues in America and our country that the polarization has caused a few things that there is bias around the world, especially in the clinical world. And so things get missed that were documented. And there's reasons, we don't know why, but there are reasons why when it comes from documentation, submission, and whatnot, things get lost along the way. We want to create a pipeline that securely sends everything that was recorded and signed so that the health insurance has the most accurate data that they then submit to the government, CMS, which then can understand the population of the public health as a whole and what that means. And is there a certain group that's getting treated unfairly? Because we'd be able to see that now. We would know, no, specifically this region, that zip code is getting less healthcare than the one right next door. And we can see that in the actual, that can be seen in the data, and that can promote a lot of social justice rights to change things on a local, on a state level, or even on a national scale. That transparency has never been there before, unless you look at data sets from 5 years back, which have been, they took their time to organize it. We can see that today. That's I think the grand changing thing that will really transform healthcare and all the people who want to create a social change when it comes to healing. Because I believe our nation is pretty sick. And we really need to come together and heal. And I think this would be one way of seeing the truth of how our healthcare is, and what can we do together to make it better for everyone.
That's an amazing transformation. I really had not thought about that. That's wonderful. At the end of the day, one of the things that we've discussed in quite a few of these podcasts is the data, right? The quality of the data that you're getting. And a lot of the data that we have for medical systems is dated data, and it doesn't really reflect the populations that we are treating. And we're basing a lot of the algorithms that we have for treatment and everything out of that older data. So this is like a renovation of the healthcare data, what you're working on. That's wonderful. Let's talk about that building that you're building. You have your first floor that has to be so strong. Where do you see the other floors of your building going to have in your business?
I think the most important pillar for integrity is going to be safety, efficacy, and trust with AI. I spoke at a panel last month where they asked me the same question about AI safety and like, what are we going to do so that patient data is safe? What are we going to do so that we know that when we ask, like when you ask ChatGPT a question, like where did that question go? Does it stay somewhere? Does it come back? Can someone else see it? And I think although, we can always have these security approaches, but we find that it is good to know what data is the AI going to train on. And for us, the most important thing was it has to be data that cannot trace back to someone. It needs to be data that's synthetic, that allows a model to still understand the context, but does not know who that person is. That's very important for us. And that's going to stay as a main pillar as we grow. So it's probably on the first floor, if I'm being honest still. So it's a big room, AI safety, ethics, and all the regulations involved with that. We also think that being up to date and relevant, so having the ability to always synchronize with data, policy data specifically, it's like you can build off a model like OpenAI, which is ChatGPT's like brain. You can start from there, and then you can build a custom model that's now going to take all this healthcare specific knowledge for your business case to make it like the ParaDocs AI powered by OpenAI. Like that's kind of like what every business would do, hence that second level I mentioned. So really AI and safety going forward. And it's, there's a lot of companies that are going to create services that might make the development process easier. Like, for example, there's a company that allows you to store the very sensitive data, kind of like in a very secure storage bucket that an AI model can tap into if it needs to. But we haven't tested the safe. We don't know if that's safe yet. So like it just got announced a few weeks ago. I think everything requires its own qualitative analysis first and be evaluated as well.
That's a big building you're building there with your ideas. Tell us about your team. When you say we, who's your team right now? Because I don't think you're a programmer, right?
Well, actually,
Are you?
as a founder, you have to always learn the skills necessary. So I have been programming as of a few months ago. So learning things about like cloud architecture, I never thought I would read a book on that. Now I read it and I do it. So it's whatever it needs to be done, right? So, but to go on what you're saying, my team. So my co-founder, her name is Dini. She's actually a primary care physician from Indonesia. She came to the Texas Medical Center as well. So we met in the same program, and her specialty is clinical AI. So her ability is to take clinical context and tell someone in software, like, this is what this means. You need to build it this way. So she really helps to bridge the gap between clinic as well as technology. I myself am learning how to do that as well as understanding like the science behind what we're doing, how we're going to structure the data. So I'm learning more of like a data engineering role. And she's also revolving around the business now, learning about the sales, marketing. And our CTO, Vipo, he's involved as well with like the deeper research, justifying like the grant that we attained from the NSF, the proposals behind that as well, picking the right model and knowing like, it's like this model and that model, like put it together. It's like creating something custom at the time. So that's what he does. He always tinkers around.
Now that you have some time under your belt, you have created this company, you're building there your first floor with this team that you have. You've gone to other places so that they can get your products as you build your business. Do you have any particular tips that you would give to anybody who's thinking about engaging in a similar enterprise as yours?
I do. I have this advice I apply to myself, and it's a little different than what most people hear. Because most people are going to hear like, read this book and just keep pushing yourself, right? That is true to some degree, but I found this whole thing to be a spiritual journey for me, where I am challenged all the time by things that don't go well. And you have to enjoy that because it's going to happen all the time. And I find that the same challenge of like, when you have, this is like the paradox of me. I'm a clinician, I've done things in science, but on my other side, I'm also fairly spiritual. And I really believe that these challenges that one's face is more reflection of like one's own journey, one's own struggles. And if you overcome your own internal struggle, your external struggles seem to alleviate. And I learn a lot about myself by learning how I get frustrated, by learning the things that don't go well, how I behave when that happens. So it's very transformative. Very I spend a lot of time to reflect and meditate about, like, why did that thing make me very upset? What could I have done better? How would I have explained this to my co-founder more efficiently? Why didn't we get that pitch? Like, why didn't the pitch not go up? The slide looked so cool and everyone was excited. It's always like looking back, like, what did I do wrong? But not to get beat up about it. So you have to keep looking back at why things went wrong in hopes to find the key insight so that it stops going wrong. Because that's why I do. I dig in to find the key insight so it doesn't happen anymore. And then I move forward. And I feel like that's kind of like what people say is you're building the track one piece at a time and the train's right behind you. Like that is a startup because you're figuring things out and like you get a little bit more runway and then there's a new problem you have to figure out right afterwards. So that type of struggle is something that you embrace and enjoy. And then once you stop worrying about that as much, I do believe that things start to like settle down because your own internal stress settles down.
That you're so right. And just recently we had an episode with another physician and they were talking. I thought that we were going to talk about the specifics of building this particular way of communicating with the community. And it ended up being an episode about their spirituality and how they finally just dove into that aspect of their lives. And then that made them be able to solve as an entrepreneur their problem, getting the better clients, getting everything happening because those struggles were solved. And if you don't do the self-introspection, like you've said, you cannot really communicate with your team. Here, being the captain of the ship means a different thing than in medicine. And yes, you're giving orders and orders and orders, but in entrepreneurship, really, yes, we do teamwork as a physician. Yes, there's humanity there, but here the skills are way different. And that skill of that self-evaluation becomes way more important, especially when so many lives around you will depend on you, right? You are bringing the salary and everything, and the product has to be, and the deadlines and all these things. That's really a great advice. So if people want to learn more about ParaDocs Health, where do they go and about you, how they can communicate with you?
Yeah, of course. So our website, ParaDocs Health, which I can definitely send over, and you can post where you find our latest information. And also LinkedIn is where we have our blogs if you want to learn more about what we do. It's also ParaDocs Health as well. Yeah, that's what we use currently right now. So look forward to that. And if those are more interested in wondering how this can work, feel free to just message me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to give you an explanation and see if that might be a useful thing for your health system or for your clinic if you want to just try on a small scale. So we very much are looking to learn about how to make this the best product possible. And I wanted to end on one very important thing that I did forget to mention when we talked about AI, which was there's not many fields out there where the focus is another person. Healthcare is one of those exceptions where it's all about the patient. Because of that, everyone who trains in healthcare thinks about someone besides themselves. That's the best people to create AI because you want it to benefit others. So I think the empathy of medicine, the warmth, the fact that we are healers, the fact that, especially during COVID, the hardship we went through to be there and strong for everyone, we have a lot of insight that we need to give to develop AI that will honestly shape the rest of the industry, not just healthcare. I think big tech can learn from us when it comes to empathetic, that's for sure. So I really want and urge a lot of people who are interested in this that there should be conversations about how to make this AI work for doctors specifically, because we have a lot that we can give to make the rest of our industry like a lot more cohesive.
I have chills with what you just said. We've had those same thoughts, trying to make sure that AI is used for the better. And in your point of view, just saying that physicians think about all the time others instead of themselves, and then being such a great potential tool to build AI is like the wonderful bridge right there. So thank you for those words. That's very important. That's the message that we want to transmit, that yes, this is the great time for physicians to get involved. And that reason right there, there's no, I cannot imagine a better reason than that. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here. It's been a wonderful time. Good luck with your enterprise. Is just the thought of what your transformations you're looking for with the data to help our communities, to help our patients is just a wonderful goal. So thanks again for all you do.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the honor.
Well, we'll see you guys then. Bye. Well, guys, that's it for today. I hope that you had a great time. I have to tell you that I think it was one of the most meaningful AI conversations I've had. I really liked the concepts that Dr. Mohtar brought up. And actually, if you want to learn more about this company and reach out to him, go to their website, ParaDocsHealth.com. That is ParaDocs health.com. Also, if you want to listen more and learn more about artificial intelligence and all the ways that you can design your physician life, take a look, go to our YouTube channel, which is called Max Allure Mastermind. I hope that you join us. Please subscribe, give us 5 stars, share the wealth. We'll see you then. Thanks, bye.
Please remember that Design is not providing specific financial, medical, or career advice. Our only intent is to stimulate your appetite for growth by sharing our experience and those of our speakers, coaches, and guests. Your personal growth and success will be unique to your circumstances and your hard work. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the show and look forward to seeing you next week.